YouTube, how's it going? So I have been meaning to for a while do this video. Actually, I'm meaning to do a lot of things. We're gonna dive into this. So I've been thinking for a while about this particular topic, and it actually is a good response to Professor Geek, who had mentioned that he didn't think that Jason Momoa's Aquaman was a good casting because the Aqua-brah thing is contrary to Aquaman's character as defined in the comics. And I, as a longtime comic fan, specifically Aquaman, disagree entirely with his take on it. And in order to discuss that, I want to go all the way back to the Golden Age. Aquaman was, of course, created to be a happy, smiley Namor. And as you guys may or may not know, Namor was created by Bill Everett way back in the day, and he was one of the first anti-heroes, specifically because he had this heroic element about him, but his values were not that of the comic-going public, right? He was violent, he was from a monarchical society, he was hostile to others, he was willing to risk civilian lives for what he considered the betterment and safety of his own people. He was capricious, he was foul-tempered, all those sorts of things. And so Namor, in his story, was this very testy, very angry, very anti-American idea. And the fun thing about Namor's concept, even those early days, was he wasn't fully a villain because he was doing what he believed to be right to defend his people and all of that. So it was very, and so you had the interplay with him and with, I'm going to forget the lady cop who was his sounding board. He was the only cop in New York who he would talk to and trust at all. And so there was this really fun interplay between these two characters where Namor would sometimes question his actions and sometimes question his motivations because of how, where blame really can be. So it's a very interesting interplay, and Namor, of course, grew to be something of a hero then in the Golden Age, and then grew to be something of a villain in the Silver Age and back and forth. And John Byrne did a really good job in his series in the 90s of comparing, contrasting, explaining those things in the context of a greater Atlantean mythology for the Marvel Universe. But that's ancillary. Let's go back to where Namor was begun with. Here's this cross and this angry and this super short-tempered guy who had definite daddy issues, grew up abandoned by his people. He was an outcast at home, he was an outcast abroad, he never really belonged anywhere. And then let's compare that to the creation of Aquaman. Aquaman was created to be all of the elements of Namor, the aquaticness, the child of two worlds kind of thing, but friendly, but happy. And he grew up with his dad, and his dad died when he reached maturity, but he was gregarious, and he was welcoming, and he was warm to people, and he was kind, and he had a desire, a passion for justice, but it wasn't focused on land. He was a man without a country in some ways. He saw beyond borders. His feelings about justice were across the board, right? Regardless of where you were from, or whatever. So sometimes he was kind to saboteurs. Sometimes he was not. But it had to do with the nature of the people involved, not the positions they held. And it was designed more for young kids, right? There's happy, fun, silly stories. And as Aquaman grew, and that was the premise on that. Now, one of the things that Professor Geek has mentioned in his commentary on it is that Aquaman has this sense of the the Shakespearean about him, the grandiose and the pomp and circumstance, and that's true. But that's not where the stories began. The stories began with just fun stories for little kids, and they became more Shakespearean in the '60s when they changed Aquaman's origin, and they added, and they actually started marketing it to girls. DC discovered in the late '50s, early '60s that Aquaman was selling more to little girls, and so that's how they started marketing. And they added the fantasy elements, the underwater castles, and Mira, and the romance stuff, and the seahorses, steeds, and things that little girls would like. Now, I discovered Aquaman through the Super Powers cartoon and that kind of stuff, and I always thought it was cool. And I love a lot of those sort of elements. But I didn't get into reading the Silver Age stories until I was grown. But as a grown man, I can still appreciate it because there was a complexity that was just under the surface of this of the Silver Age Aquaman stories. But I don't want to dwell on that too much, because the point is the Shakespearean elements, the pomp and circumstance elements of it. So Aquaman first was created to be this gregarious, friendly guy. Now, the Aqua-brah idea that Jason Momoa brought to the role is not contrary to the gregarious, open-hearted Aquaman that we see in the Golden Age. So that's not in conflict. As far as the grandioseness and the pomp and circumstance idea, that is part of it. The thing you got to realize is, like I said, that was a later addition, and it didn't, in the comics, it didn't take away from his gregariousness or his friendliness. It just added to it, in fact, because he had a world above the seas where he was everyone's hero, and a world below the seas where he was this government figure, and was learning how to be a government figure as he was learning how to be a husband and learning how to be, later on, be a father. Well, even with Garth, there was some of that fatherhood, but paternal concept with all of that. But the thing about Shakespeare, right, and the Shakespearean quality is Shakespeare is not all pomp and circumstance. We sometimes think about it being that way because we're divorced from the language, right? And always, but it was written. Shakespeare wrote so that the nobles and the commoners could all appreciate the same thing. It was mass market appeal. That's what he wrote in there. And that's why you've got lots of silly jokes. You've got a lot of silly puns. You've got sex jokes. And you've also got jokes about, you've got the stories about the workaday guys and their interactions with the nobles, and that the nobles are noble. Many of them are noble in spirit, some of them are not. The evils are sometimes have highfalutin plans, like in Much Ado About Nothing. A lot of them are just common day things, like in the Midsummer Night's Dream is very much of a common man's story. And in fact, the fairies are in many ways are representative of the noble classes interfering with the common man's everyday stuff, where regular humans are the part of the common man, and they are the playthings of the fairy or the noblesse. So you have all of this stuff that works in there together, where the Shakespearean concept that was adopted into Aquaman is not divorced from the commonality aspect of it. And in the Jason Momoa movie, you have a normal workaday Joe who happens to have superpowers, who grew up outside of this royal context, discovering a place within the royal context. That is something that could come right out of a Shakespeare play, right? Now, I do think that there was a couple of subpar jokes that didn't necessarily belong in the Aquaman movie. I could have peed on that or whatever. I think that there were a few dialogue choices that are a little clunky, or maybe more than a few. And I definitely agree that in a lot of ways the costuming could use some work. Some of the soundtrack decisions were baffling. But as far as being an adaptation of the Aquaman material, it's not in any way a bad one. And that's one of those things that I think that it actually captures all of those elements of him being a gregarious man of the people, while also being the heir to the throne, or the keeper of the throne, and what that means. And the journey for him, understanding and accepting both of those roles, is within the movie. And so, for the sake of it being an Aquaman adaptation, it's an excellent Aquaman adaptation, which made a really good movie. I wouldn't call it an excellent movie, but it was a really good movie. But it was a good adaptation of Aquaman. The glory and the grandeur of the kingdom of Atlantis was present. Some of their choices of geography I find baffling, but I blame Jeff Johns for that. But the thing it's an excellent adaptation in terms of grabbing those elements of making it. And the Aqua-brah is very much a latter-day interpretation of the Golden Age Aquaman's character, without any way taking away from that. You can say what you will about the whole vengeance piece in it, and the origin of Black Manta, and that would, I think, seem maybe a little out of character, but it also sets up very interesting concept in the next movie. If they raise the stakes on what Aquaman is responsible for, what responsibility to a person means. I don't know if they're going to play with that or not, but it's an interesting little take on that. Anyhow, that's my little on the road video, which you guys got to watch the other side of my nose as I watch the road, and hopefully you guys will appreciate it. If you enjoy the vid, throw up a like, share it around. Check out my Patreon, which is not mine, it is my company's, Ideal Comics, and the link will be in the description. And the contributions to Patreon do get split between our partners and contributors. So if you've appreciated what my commentary, my shows, and you want us to be able to bring you more comic content, give us a like, and that goes a long ways toward helping those of us who've been making indie comics for a decade or more. So anyway, have a great one, and keep reading comics.